one other thing.
Well, what I was saying was, to the question, the 1976 Serrano decision changed the formula for school funding in California. So since that court decision, most public schools across the board in California receive about the same allocation per student than any, no matter where you're at in California, pretty much equalized, except for a small number of school districts, which are basic aid school districts, which are school districts in very high socioeconomic status communities. Palo Alto is one of those. Palo Alto is a basic aid school district, which is about one of about 50-some school districts. 100 now? Okay, so it's about 100 school districts. It's a very complicated formula when you are in basic aid or when you're out of basic aid. But basically it means that those school districts keep about 70% of their property tax revenue instead of sending it to Sacramento, which basically means that they are more able, they get more revenue per student than the non-basic aid school districts. So the inequity that Serrano in that court decision intended to equalize most school districts across the state, with the exception of this loophole which allows a small number of districts to maintain their property tax and to have a higher revenue for their students. So East Palo Alto is not one of those. Ravenswood School District is not one of those that you jump across the highway, and the Palo Alto School District is the basic aid school district. So there's still very big disparity in school expenditure per student depending upon where you live. So in a sense, people have talked about challenging the Serrano decision, going back to court and challenging that. And there's a lot of opposition to that in lots of interesting places. So it's become very complicated. But most schools in most places get the same amount of money, except when you're looking at rich school districts.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's exactly right. The basic aid is something that I don't really understand how it happened because I'm fairly young. But I imagine there was a lot of politics involved, as it usually is in big decisions like that. The point I was making, just to be clear to answer your question, is that within districts, so if you just look at students within a city, and you compare how much money is being spent on their education within a single district, that's where I was talking about the disparity, because most cities have rich areas, middle class areas, and poor areas. And many of those areas encompass one district, and so the district gets an amount of money, and it's how that money is spent once it arrives from the state is the point that I was trying to make.
I want to take the position that I don't think it is the dropout problem is as related to money as it is related to teaching and learning. Matter of fact, if you give me just a moment, I was reading some of these surveys of young people who have dropped out, and one recent survey that was done by the Civic Enterprise Institute surveyed about 4,000 dropout students. This is what they said. 47% said they found school not to be interesting. It had no meaning for them. They said that right out loud over and over again, according to the people who did this survey. They weren't engaged. They missed too many days, which I think speaks to personal support and personal engagement and advocates in the community and in the school who reach out to them on a continual basis to keep them focused on the things that really matter to them. 38% they said they had too much freedom. I wish I knew what they meant by that, but I believe that part of it was too much freedom as regards the classes that they took and how much effort they were free to put into it. And 35% said I started to fail and started failing everything, and I didn't have the academic tools necessary to do better. I think those are the ingredients. So I think that if we go back and we talk about support systems and engagement of the community, things like internships, community leaders working with groups of students to help them understand how meaningful school can be. I think when things are taught that are taught in a way that it demonstrates that what you learn in the classroom really does apply to the real world you're going into, whether it's philosophy or history or psychology or any of those subjects. They have deep meaning in terms of how you view the world and how you deal with it. And young people have to understand that as early as they can grasp those abstract ideas. And then when they get to high school or middle school and high school, you've got to pay attention to what they're learning. It is the academic life, you know, that makes it possible to learn and relearn and learn again, and they're going into that kind of world. So when a student says to me, if I sit down in the cafeteria with a student and he tells me about his high school career and he wants to be an engineer and he didn't have physics in high school, I hear that all the time. So how did that happen? Or I took geometry and didn't like it, so I didn't take any more math. Are you kidding? And yet we are trying to prepare every young person for post-secondary education that has meaning and leads to meaningful employment. So you do have to come out of these places with the academic skills necessary to learn and relearn. And I just want to go back, I hope it doesn't sound trite. It is always about teaching and learning, and students being engaged in their own learning.
Next, we're going to change topics, discuss how we can help undocumented students. A question that is for the whole panel, asked by David Baladeras.
My name is Dave Valderas, and my topic is on the DREAM Act. Many immigrants are living in the United States and are undocumented and are going to school. When they finish high school, they sometimes can't go to a four-year university because they cannot apply for financial aid. If they do not have money, then they do not go to college, which leads them to dropping out. Many versions of the DREAM Act have been proposed, but none have been passed. How can we help undocumented students pay for college?
We help. College Track is a program that accepts students irregardless of their documentation. Part of what we do at College Track is to identify scholarships for students. Also, students earn scholarship money through us. And so it doesn't matter whether you're undocumented. We in fact have our speaker at graduation on Friday was an undocumented student who is now a graduate of UC Merced. She'd kill me. UC Monterey Bay. Okay? And we currently have several students who are undocumented, so we find ways to support them. We do, as a matter of fact, at College Track, our students circulated petitions in favor of the DREAM Act, and we presented those petitions to Anna Eshoo, our legislator, and we strongly support that notion. So there are ways that undocumented students can in fact go on to college. One more thing and then I'll pass it. There are actually a number of schools that provide funding and special scholarships. We have a student now who's down at Santa Clara University on a full scholarship, and she's undocumented. And we have a student this year that's been accepted to UC Berkeley, and he's undocumented, and he has a full 4-year scholarship as well. So there's hope.